everyone, in this video we are going to discuss a question that was asked from Models of Communication in NT UGC NET December 2021 and June 2022 merge cycles. So if you consider the module communication, we have various core areas or important areas that should focus on. We have these types of communication, then process of communication, then you need to focus on models of communications, barriers to effective communication, and also we should have a very good practice on the questions that are coming from this area, because that will also help you in scoring good marks for this particular module. So considering this core area, that is models of communication, we have various models to study under that. We have this Aristotle's model of communication, then we have Shannon and Weaver model, then we have Berlow's model. There are a lot of models we have to concentrate on. So in this video, what we are going to do is, as I have already mentioned, we'll be just taking a question that was asked in the very recent exam, that is NT UGC NET December 2021 and June 2022 merge cycles, and we'll be focusing on this particular model, that is Aristotle's model of communication, a very important model from NET point of view. So I'll just show you the question first, and then we'll be moving to the model, and then we are trying to solve this question. So this is the question. Identify the correct sequence of the elements of communication set by Aristotle, and we have various options given here: speech, speaker, audience, occasion and effect. So these are the various elements that are associated with Aristotle's model of communication, and we have to arrange them in the correct sequence. So there is something that you concentrate or focus on these kinds of questions, that is, if you know the correct model, the sequence, you can score marks, and if you don't know it, it's really difficult for you to understand or identify the sequence, because these are all theoretical, or these are models basically, right? So we should have an understanding about these models, then only we can score marks. If you know, you can actually score, and if you don't know, there is higher possibilities of you picking out the wrong choice. Okay, so firstly we will be looking at the Aristotle's model of communication in order to answer this question, and later we'll be coming back to this question again. So considering Aristotle's model of communication, it is a type of oral communication. It is known as it is a linear model of oral communication, and also this is a speaker-centered model. So these are some of the core points or ideas that you have to remember, because when it comes to these kinds of questions, you can also expect match the following questions from models of communication. So if you can just focus on these key terms, that will really help you to identify the right combinations in the match the following questions also. So Aristotle's model of communication is basically focusing on oral communication. It's a linear model because it's a one-way communication. I'll just show you a diagram which shows this entire process, then this idea will be more clearer to you. So it's like the speaker is the main person, or it's a speaker-centered model. So speaker is a center of this kind of model, and the audience are really passive. They are not that into, or they are not responding that much. In that sense, we can say that this is a linear model of oral communication, and also it's a speaker-centered model. And when you consider this model, the center first prepares a content which he does by carefully putting his thoughts in words with an objective of influencing the listeners or the recipients. So when we consider the communication model, that is Aristotle's model of communication, as I have already mentioned, this as a linear model of oral communication. So this is basically a model that is actually explaining the communication of an orator. So basically what happens, or what an orator or a speaker does before presenting a speech to the audience, the speaker has to prepare what he has to, or she has to present in front of the audience, right? So the speaker will be having certain thoughts in mind, and the speaker has to introduce, or the speaker has to share those thoughts to the audience according to the occasion, and that should actually influence the audience. That is the purpose of making, that is the purpose of having a speech, right? So the speaker has to first prepare this content that the speaker really wants to convey to the audience beforehand, and this content is basically, or the speaker has to carefully put words to his thoughts, and this particular preparation is basically focusing on the objective of influencing the listeners or the recipients. of a model or this kind of a communication, we know that the audience is passive, and this makes the communication process one way from speaker to receiver. We already said that this Aristotle's model of communication is a speaker-centered model. It's a linear model of oral communication. So if you consider a narrator, he is actually talking to a larger audience, and there the audience are just listening. They are passively attending this communication process because they are not giving back any kind of feedback. That happens in a speech, right? So here the audience is passive, and this makes the communication one way. So there is no feedback, immediate feedback from the audience part. That's why we call it as a linear model. Linear model means from the speaker to the receiver, there is no feedback or reply from the receiver's side. So that's why we call it as a linear model, or it's a one-way model. So the audience here is passive, and this makes the communication process one way from the speaker to the receiver or to the audience. The speaker should prepare his or her speech beforehand according to the target audience and occasion. We already said that. So we said that the speaker has to arrange, or the speaker has to carefully put words for his or her ideas, right? So that means the speaker has to prepare what the speaker has to convey to the audience beforehand, and the objective of this particular speech is influencing the audience. So he or she has to take into account the audience, the target audience, and also the occasion in which the speaker is actually giving the speech, or this particular, he's presenting the ideas to the audience. So the speaker, he or she has to consider the target audience and also the occasion, and accordingly the speaker has to make or prepare a speech beforehand. So this is what this Aristotle's model of communication is conveying, right? So as we have already picked out the important points, and we have already discussed that. So now we are just focusing on the various elements that are associated with Aristotle's model of communication, and also we are trying to figure out the right sequence of the elements that are there. So that is what we have to identify in the question also, right? So if you just diagrammatically represent Aristotle's model of communication, this is what you can obtain. You have a speaker there. So the speaker will be preparing a speech. That speech should be according to the occasion in which the speaker is conveying this message or presenting this speech. Okay, so we have a speaker who is preparing a speech beforehand, and the speech should be according to the occasion, and that particular speech will be conveyed or presented in front of an audience. And what is the objective of presenting this particular speech? The speaker is expecting an effect from the speaker is actually expecting an effect in the audience. That is what the intention or the objective of preparing this kind of a speech, right? So we have a speaker. So this is the sequence. This is what we have to focus here in order to answer the question that we are discussing also. So we have a speaker who is preparing a speech, or who is putting his words, or who is putting his ideas into words. So he or she is preparing a speech according to the occasion, and that speech will be conveyed to an audience. And what is the main objective, or what is the after effect of presenting this kind of a speech to an audience? It should make any kind of an effect. Okay. So this is the sequence. Coming to the question that we are discussing here. So we have these 5 different elements that are mentioned here. So we have speech, speaker, audience, occasion, and effect, right? So we have to identify the correct sequence of the elements of communication set by Aristotle. So what is the first element that you can identify from here? That is obviously speaker, right? So that's what we have discussed here also. We have the speaker who is preparing a speech beforehand according to the occasion, or taking into account the occasion. The speaker is actually preparing a speech. So we have the speaker, then we have the speech. That is option A. Then comes occasion. So speaker, speech, then you have the occasion, and you are conveying this speech according to the occasion to a target audience, right? So that is option C. So we have the speaker, speech, occasion, audience, and we are expecting an effect in the audience as a result of presenting the speech as well. So the effect comes at the end of this sequence. Okay, so once more, if you identify these different elements, and if you're trying to make it into a correct sequence, we can say that first we have the speaker, then you have the speech, then you have the occasion, then the audience, and finally effect. That means we have B, then A, then you have D, then C and D, right? That is the right option. So BA, so let's consider BA. So if you just consider the options here, you can find that there is only one option that starts with B. So from that identification of the first element itself, we are getting into the answer. Anyway, we'll just check out. So B, speaker, then you have speech. So BA, then you have the occasion. So BAD. Yeah, that's BAD, and then you have the audience and effect, that is C and D. So CE. So BADCE is the right, that is the right sequence, that is option D. So the right answer for this question is option D itself. So in this video, we have just focused on one of the models of communication. We have just took a sample question that was asked in the very recent exam, that is NTUGC NET December 2021 and June 2022 merge cycle. And through this question, we have identified and studied one of the most important models of communication, that is Aristotle's model. And we have other models also. So if you're preparing very seriously for your next attempt for NET exam, make sure that you're focusing on the various models of communication under the module communication. I have already mentioned some of the models in the beginning, at the beginning or the start of this video. So take down those models and try to read on that, and make sure that you know the correct sequence of the various elements that are associated with it. And if you want a very systematic study like this in your NET preparation, or if you need any kind of guidance, you can also think of Applebee's courses also. We have online and offline courses available here. So if you want to know more about our courses, you can just contact the number that is given in the description box. So thanks for watching and happy learning.